Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Project Unknown. I'm a few weeks behind. I've been investigating and have been out of town, so I do apologize. This week, though, I have Sabrina Marie, who is a paranormal author and a children's author. So let's go with our usual question. And Sabrina, if you want to share with everyone, going back as far as you'd like, what brought you into this field of all things odd?
I was born into it. I'm actually a hereditarily gifted medium. So when I was born into a haunted house, and it all came straight to me. My mother's actually a medium. My grandmother was gifted. It goes way back, and my grandmothers are actually my guides. So they're
That's
with me all the time.
So how far back were you able to, if you've dug into it, how far back were you able to trace this?
I was able to trace this back to my great great grandmother, who was the daughter of a Cherokee chief.
So you're part Native American.
Yes.
Well, that's a new one. Now I have a lot more questions that are going to pop up later. So let's go back to you then. What is your earliest memory of your gift or childhood or the haunted house? Some people, like, I can't remember what I ate for breakfast, but some people can remember like when they were 2 years old. So what's an instance that you can bring up for everyone to hear about?
I remember being probably about 3, 4 years old, and we lived in a house, and it was a really old house. And down in the basement, they had old coal bins. So that's how old the house was.
Wow.
And I could see laundry was down there. So my mom had to go down there. She hated it down there. She always felt creeped out down there. But I had no knowledge of anything like that at that age. So I would look over at this coal bin and see this man inside it. I could still describe him. He's an old, thin man wearing a black old suit. And I could see this man clear as day. And she would go upstairs and, of course, never let me down in the basement.
Uh-huh.
And she would like stick steak knives and stuff into the door, like that old back in the 80s way of protection. Doors up against the doorknobs, and just to keep me from going down there, because I had this need to go to the basement. I wanted to go down there for some reason, and it was him.
Did he have a name? Like, a lot of kids have imaginary. Well, let me rephrase that. Imaginary friends. Did he have a name? Like, if you can
No.
describe the instance of any interaction with him, or was it more so just seeing him going into the basement?
I just saw him, but I did have the imaginary friend who was always with me. Of course, I blamed everything on him as a little kid, and he protected me from all of that. My mother, until probably 5 to 10 years ago, had no idea that my imaginary friend was actually like a 40-year-old man.
Wow.
That was a ghost. It's so funny though, because we went through old pictures and I found a picture of him.
So he's a family member.
He's actually a family member. He was,
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what he was. I think he was my grandmother's uncle. But yeah,
So
there's actually
back
a
in the
picture
day.
of him way back in the day.
So with the man in the basement and your quote unquote imaginary friend, or let's say protector, you brought that up, that describe from the moment you discovered that you could see things or had these abilities to, let's say, through high school. Let's get that window. So from 4 years old through 18 years old, share the nutshell of your life.
Well, I pushed it all aside when I was in my teens. Of course, I thought everybody would think I was crazy at school, so I can't go around talking about ghosts and talking
Come on, kids aren't that mean.
They were at my school.
Oh yeah, I'm being a little sarcastic.
But I actually started investigating at the age of 13. I was over at a friend's house and I looked across and I saw through my window, I saw a woman walk through my kitchen, and I was home alone. And my dogs were there. So I had to go over and figure out what was going on with my dogs. And what I didn't tell anybody at the time was that I could see my kitchen cabinets through her.
Oh.
So I went over and I went in and I started communicating. I had never really seen any of like the paranormal TV shows back then and hadn't known any of the questions or anything that people would say. And I went in and like, who are you? You can't be here. You can't be in my home. I was terrified while I did it. But I tried to talk my way through that. I never saw her again, but man, that house was haunted. That house was crazy.
I will say before you tell me, is this the house, before we dive into it, that we were talking about before the show started?
No.
Okay.
This
Oh
was,
my. You have a series of houses.
Oh, I have. Everywhere I've lived has been haunted. Everywhere we worked has been haunted. Being a medium, I'm a beacon. My mother's like a beacon, so it tends to follow us everywhere we go.
And I will say though, and I'll give you credit. I brought this up on other podcasts. I think naturally though that women are more fearless than men when it comes to this stuff. Because I can tell you right now, when I was in middle school, I would not go into my grandma's basement. And so the weird thing is, I remember her door had, I don't know if you remember these, one of those, it looked like a wind chime, but it was made to let you know if someone comes in the door. So it was like the ball and the string that would bounce on the guitar chords when you open the door.
Oh, I've heard of those. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it's called, but so I'd touch the basement door and I'd hear the plucking of the strings. I'm like, nope, not doing it. And it's, I've brought this up in other podcasts. I was terrified of the dark growing up, in middle school and beginning of high school, just because, my parents thought it was a good idea to let me watch horror movies when I was like 6 years old. And it didn't mess with me at all. Just made me want to sleep with the light on half the time. But from what you were saying, and then we're going to keep going into the future houses you moved in, I do think that naturally women are more fearless than men, even, out of high school, because there are people that I've brought investigating for the first time. And I will say the females will run into the sound quicker than the males do 99% of the time, unless the male has been doing it for years and years. But first timers, you guys get the victory. I'll say that 100%. So you have the woman in the kitchen. Was this like, when you say that, I think of the woman in Insidious, the one in like the heavy white dress that's in the unknown or whatever that area is called.
She just looked like a normal woman, gray haired and kind of messy hair, but I couldn't really tell what she was wearing. We had this big bay window, and I was across the cul-de-sac when I saw this. Like, my parents are gone. I'm home alone. I wasn't supposed to be out of the house. I wasn't supposed to be across the street. My dogs are there, and like, where did this old woman come from? So I went over. I went through. I did all the questioning. I didn't get any response, thankfully. At that point, I probably would have lost my mind and ran out of that house until my parents got home.
Yep.
But that wasn't the end of it. That was just the very first thing at that house. We had a little boy that was in my parents' walk-in closet. There was a really negative man.
Wait a minute. We're going to touch on each one of these spirits, because again, everything you're describing is like Insidious 6. So you might as well just call James Wan and be like, hey, I'm going to pitch this to you and you do what you need to do with it.
I haven't even seen that movie.
It's so in Insidious, it is, there's a between, the living and the dead, there's a space. I think it's called the unknown. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's kind of like when you're asleep, but you dream and you're aware you're dreaming. So, they would go under hypnosis or asleep or anything, and they'd wake up in their house, but their house, similar to Stranger Things, if you've seen that, where it's the same house, same area, but it's in a different plane of existence. And they've seen things like little kids and a woman in a murdered woman in a white dress, stuff like that. So when you say a kid in the closet, that's every childhood fear. every childhood fear is the boogeyman in the closet. Yeah, a kid, okay, but still, if you look in the closet, I just think of The Grudge now. I'm a huge horror movie fan, so I connect all this stuff. And The Grudge, you got that meowing little boy that's like peeking down from the attic or in the closet. No. So, was he the negative one, or is there more?
No, he was actually a very sweet little boy. My mom would lay in bed at night and just see him just go past the ceiling and like a white light and into the closet, and it was like he was hiding from the other spirits that were in the house. There was a really negative one there that attached to myself and my mom and went to the next place with us. He was very negative. My parents got divorced, and my mom and I were moving out. My dad was staying in the house for a little while, and my mom went back in to get curtains from the bedroom, and she could feel this like weight on her and couldn't breathe. Like it sucked all the oxygen out, and she just had this huge weight on her. And so she got out really quick.
Mhm.
And when we were leaving, we looked up and you could see the mini blinds pull down, like a finger come between and just look out. And we got the heck out of there so fast. But he ended up going to the apartment with us and wreaked havoc there for a little while.
So this was a, in lack of a better terms, this was a human spirit, but an asshole.
Yes, total asshole.
Okay.
Total asshole.
So, did he kind of overpower when other spirits were around? Like you said, the little boy seemed like he was hiding.
Yeah, he was. This guy could like suck the energy out of a room, and you could feel this like oppressive weight on you when he was around, and just he made you feel scared. And I at that point I was 14, and then when we got to the next place, which still isn't the one with all
Okay.
the stuff,
Okay.
he came there too, and it was horrible there. I mean, you could see these balls of light going through the hallway, and couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything because you would hear the sounds. He was like banging in the bedroom and stuff like that. But he was absolutely just a jerk.
And that's what I kind of tell people when they go into places, because I'm sure you've seen it. And by the way, just a side note, everyone watching this, we can see your comments. If you have questions or anything you'd like to add, go ahead and put it in there, and I will bring it into the conversation. So everyone that has said hello from both of us.
Hi.
I've told people on investigations, you see these shows that, oh, it's a demon, it's a demon, it's a demon. It can be Toys R Us and it's a demon. Sometimes it's just an asshole. Because I've been in investigations, and you said you've investigated, you've probably seen it too, where something will come through a spirit box or an ovulus and say, I'm a demon. No, because they don't tell you that they're a demon. It's a nice try, but to the new person, that's going to scare the hell out of them.
Yeah.
With what we talked about, let's go to the next house. I don't know if it's the one we talked about before, but from the apartment to the next house.
Well, from that apartment, we ended up staying with my grandfather for a little while. Not much happened there, but then we moved into what I like to dub my real life horror story. We lived there for 28 years. And that place was a living nightmare. From the very first second we got there, it's this like facade of this cute little quaint ranch style apartment, just 6 units in a building. And my mother instantly felt this black cloud, as she calls it, over this building, over this complex. And from that moment on, it was pure hell for 28 years. It was a constant stream of spirits coming through. There were portals. Woman had opened a portal, and a man had killed himself, and that opened a portal. So we had a super highway going through the entire 6 unit apartments.
And by chance, was there any real? And then I'm going to read you a comment real quick, and I'll let you answer it because they missed the first couple minutes of our podcast. Was there any railroads or running water near this apartment?
No.
So it was just a conduit based on the events that happened there.
Yep.
So
There was
before
a lot of suicide there.
Before you continue into more of this apartment, somebody asked, they missed the first few minutes. Are you a magnet for the paranormal, or do you just have some really bad luck? So I'll let you answer that in a nutshell.
I am a magnet who has some bad luck.
So it's a mix of both. It's okay.
I've had great experiences too, though. I mean, I've had some extremely rewarding experiences with the paranormal.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
So speaking of the bad, I want to hear more about this apartment.
We had there was a constant stream of spirits through. We would see people in the hallway. We would see people in the bedroom. We would see people just go by. We would see anomalies. We would hear things. And it wasn't just us, it was everybody that lived in the building. We even had our rental managers. We had several rental managers. They didn't want to stay there. They would admit to seeing shadow figures and having stuff happen in their places too. And this building got to a point where our managers didn't want to come near it. We had one manager actually go out of her way to avoid going in any apartment in this building because she felt so scared of it. And so it was just like this negative ball of energy that was walls and ceiling and floor. So we ended up having shadow figures. We had poltergeist activity. We had a really negative spirit that nearly killed me. And we had a neighbor who liked to conjure. And he brought in something. Now, trust me when I say this, barely do you ever find a demon. Like we just talked about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You will know when it really is, because there really was one.
So let me ask, because before you add to it, and by the way, if you want to leave any spoilers out for certain reasons, which we'll talk about after the apartment, that's fine. But I will say that, and I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, that the one place I believe I came across a demonic or a non-human entity, it was more psychological, and I felt drained, challenged, just absolutely cornered the whole night. I didn't see anything, but just the feelings, the responses, the activity, the stuff like that. But I'm still convinced that at this location is where I came across something non-human. And I know yours is amplified based on our previous discussion, but your initial feelings of knowing it was a non-human, how would you describe it? Similar or different?
Well, at first I thought it was just another spirit, just another, ass spirit.
Yeah.
And then it started playing on my mind. This was a full-blown oppression. I wasn't possessed or anything. It was an oppression. That thing messed with my mind so much for a very long time. And it got me to the point where there were moments where I just wanted to kill myself to get released from it. It made me think that people hated me, that I knew loved me. It was telling me how I should kill myself, that I should slit my wrist on my mattress the way it absorbed the blood, and my mother could be happy that I died.
Wow.
And it was so in my head that no matter how much I disbelieved it, I believed it. So I would look at everybody around me differently, and it showed me visions of children that I knew being killed. It really messed with my mind. It had me to a point where I get emotional every time I talk about it.
It's okay. It's all right.
It had me to a point where I just really I was desperate.
So let me ask, and I'm going to say this to lighten the subject because I see you're getting upset, and that's okay. But anyone who watches this stuff knows I try and find the light in anything. First off, you beat it. So we know that spoiler, that whatever it was or whoever it was, it's no longer there and you're still here. So there's a victory there. Second off, this is going to sound so bad, but anytime I've come across, the potential, the one time I mentioned to you, but this was only a night. I didn't have more than a night with this entity. You had years with your entity. So I could not compare what I experienced to anything you compared, but my self-defense when I come across what I believe is a non-human spirit, and this is just to break the tension, is the little devil in South Park. It just helps me mentally. Like, no. This guy isn't gonna get through to me. But I will say, I read a book called The Demonologist that Ed Warren, or it's about the Ed and Lorraine Warren cases. And somebody did see a demon that looked just like the one from South Park. There was a reason I was bringing it up. And when they interviewed Ed Warren, they said, "Why do you think it presented itself like that?" And he goes, "Because nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe that I saw a hoofed red guy with horns and a tail and stuff like that." So with what you're saying and what I'm saying is I'm just trying to, find light in it, because as you know, when you go through negative experiences, no matter what you do in life, no matter how many years it's been, there's always a crack in the door. And that's why I wanted to try and find some light before you continued on after that. So hopefully my rambling made some sense.
It absolutely did.
But okay, so it got you to your lowest point. You beat it. There's the end game. But let me ask this again without spoilers, did you get to a turning point that no, I can beat this, or did you have help or call in help to beat it?
My mother was my help. I asked for help to several people and I didn't get anywhere. Nobody was willing to actually help. And some of these people were my friends. And so that was hurtful at the moment, but I understand now why, because my mother ended up being my hero in this. She went through every religion, every cleansing, every ritual that she could find, anything that she could do possible to get this thing to release me. And I wish she was on here too, because she could tell you the story a lot better than I could of how this ended. My grandmothers were there, and in spirit form, they were my strength. But my mother called for our ancestors, and we have a lot of Cherokee ancestors, and we even go overseas into Europe. And she said that she could see a wall of white, and I honestly saw this too as a psychic. This wall of white light between myself and this demon. And she said she started to make it out, and it looked like people, like spirits. I just saw light. And in that moment, it got so far in between me and this demon that I got the strength to do this with the help of my grandmothers. And I felt like I was still standing there in my hallway, but I felt like I slid down the wall and fell on the floor. I smelled roses.
Wow.
So that is true. You actually do smell roses when which I thought was just something from the movies. Yeah. You do smell roses, and I finally felt this like lift of freedom off of me. It was still there. It was outside the apartment, but it couldn't hurt me anymore.
Do you think it's still tied to the property?
I think it's tied to the man that sent it. He was a very negative man. This all started just because we asked him to turn his TV down. He was one of these kind of people that was just so negative in himself. He would hire people that were, new to the country and treat them like slaves. He called himself the boss.
So you asked him to turn his TV down, and he threw a demon at you.
Yes, he
That's a
did.
fair trade. So okay. With I there's one thing I got to point out that you brought up that I'm going to give you all the credit in the world. That when people think of oppression or possession or any of that stuff, a lot of people go to the Catholic religion, but you don't know where this came from because different religions have different evils, different demons. So the fact that you said your mom was looking into a number of religions is something that a lot of people don't talk about, especially if you have something like an elemental. You start reading a Bible at an elemental, they're not going to care. It's not going to do anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what did it feel like a Catholic based by the end of it, looking back at it, you know, with what your mom did, and do you think it was Catholic based, Native American based, Muslim based?
It was more Muslim. He was Islamist. He was an Islamist, and they call in jinns.
I just did a TikTok on a jinn.
So my mother actually figured this out, and I will never say the name
Okay.
ever of what it's called, but it was a jinn, which is of course a lower level demon.
So jinns have names?
This one, I'll see, how do I explain this? That's another one I wish my mother was here to talk about, because she could.
Did it refer to itself in a way?
It did. It actually
Okay.
gave a name, but it would actually give its name broken up. So we decided, okay, all this is going on, and you're not supposed to investigate your home, but we got to figure out what the hell is going on here. So we started investigating, and it actually, through spirit box, broke up its name. It would be like the first part, and then another jumbled up word would come through, and then the middle part. And we started finally putting this together of what this thing's name is. So it tricked us with that. It never would say it together.
That's interesting. It's kind of like a game of I'm drawing a blank where the words are scrambled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the name. I draw a blank. I'll think of it when we're done with the podcast. But it's crazy that you say it was a gin, because I literally just did a quick TikTok on gins, and I only look up like a few bullet points because I don't want to do a 45-minute TikTok when 5 seconds in people aren't going to watch it past that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, the existence of jinns and how they travel and where they live and stuff like that. Like you said, a lower level demon. And back in the days when we were kids, people thought jinns were genies. So you've got Aladdin, you've got wishes, but guess what? You can make a deal with the devil. You can make a deal with the demon. You can make a wish. You just got to give something in return. And that's where the real concept of jinns come in. So, and I'm going to start bouncing around a little bit now, because what I want
say that we did use Catholic prayer,
and
that fought it off. It did not like that. It hated the Christmas version of Hallelujah from Cloverton. It hated that. All the spirits that were there that were negative hated that.
But if you look at the roots of all religions, Islamic, Muslim, Catholic, Christianity, they all have a similar concept. It's just as they've evolved, they've done this. So with this story that I want everyone to know about, you wrote a book on it.
Yes, I did.
So go ahead.
Dark Side of the Apple, a true story of paranormal attack.
And does this book cover the whole spectrum of, when you moved into the apartment to the smell of roses and beyond?
It is. We couldn't put 20 years in it. It would be huge.
It'd be like, that thick. That's all.
Yeah. But it's the worst parts. There's actually a little bit of a few good things in, like my grandmother's and everything, but it's the worst parts of it. How we started to how we ended and how we got free, which we just left that apartment in January. the last week of January.
Like this year.
Yes.
So when did you separate yourself from this? Like I didn't realize this was kind of recent.
The month before I separated, the end of December
Of 2022. Holy shit. Excuse my
Yeah,
language.
it's very recent.
Like when you're talking about it, I'm thinking of like, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, not like 5 months ago.
I was really struggling with whether or not to write this book because it was so new. I thought for sure that, if I started talking about it, I dredged it all up again, that, it could start again, that it would somehow link me back to this thing and these shadows and this entity that tried to kill me. And I thought for sure that it would come back. And I struggled so hard. I talked to friend after friend and finally decided that, it'd be good therapy for us, for myself and for my mother, because we lived together through this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to make sure that people out there who were going through a similar situation, and this people look at you like you're crazy when you say, I was oppressed by a demon, or this girl tried to kill me and she was a ghost. And so I wanted people to know that there would be somebody out there that would believe them, that, they would give them validation to what they're going through, that they can come and talk to. And, I'll help as much as I can. Like I was on Dave Schrader's podcast, and I got several people coming to me and asking for help, saying that they were going through oppression or their friend was going through oppression. And I'm going through the same thing, helping them, that I went through trying to get help for myself. A lot of brick walls.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because that's something in the field that is kind of in the paranormal field. And I'll talk from personal experience, and feel free to tell me right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not going to bite your head off if you tell me I'm wrong on something. So I'm not going to give away my check boxes. If somebody reaches out for help, because if I give it away, they're going to be like, okay, so I know that's what he's looking for. There's a few things I do, and then I will take a week or two to research the information I was given before I make a choice of putting myself out there. So I will never shoot someone down from sharing their story or what they're struggling with and stuff like that. But this one I will give away. My biggest thing is I understand when somebody is going through an oppression phase before a possession phase, they want the help, and they want the help immediately. Yeah. I get that. But you also, being an investigator, know we can't just go in guns blazing. That's exactly. Nothing is going to fix that. So one thing that pushes me away, and you don't seem like the type, but this is something where, people that are watching this podcast now or down the road understand, is, me saying I need a week or so doesn't mean I don't want to help. It means I need to prepare to help. When somebody says, no, you need to be here tomorrow, you don't believe me, blah, 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 stuff like that, that's a warning sign in my head, or a red flag in my head of, okay, is this demonic or is this mental? Because the history of possessions, it's always been the game of, is it a mental illness or is it a demon? And so that's where our jobs of take away everything you went through, that our jobs of investigators is finding the difference before we put ourselves in a dangerous situation. Because there is a difference with walking into a location where there is potentially a demon compared to walking into a location and having a gun pulled on you because the person's just out of the loony bin. Excuse the way I'm saying it, but I've come across that as an investigator at 16 years. And it's that's the hard part. So I feel for you when you say it's a lot of dead ends, because there also are a lot of people that won't touch that stuff. If the moment the word demon is brought up, or possession or oppression or stuff like that, I'm a walking beacon in the aspect of, I carry a stupid amount of trauma in my life. And what is that? That's a buffet for evil. And I use it to my advantage at some locations. It's kind of fun. But going into somewhere where it potentially could to turn into something bigger, I need to be prepared. And in 2010, I think it was, somebody reached out very similar to what you're saying about, their animals were getting hurt, that they felt depressed, that they wanted to just end it. They wanted to give up. They were distancing themselves from people. They felt like they couldn't leave the house, like they felt trapped in the house. They didn't want them to leave. And I believed them. And I said, I need a week. Let me look up the property history. Let me look up anything I could find before coming out. The closer it got to me coming out to help, the more intense the activity got. And the day I was supposed to go out there, she called me and said, I can't have you come out. It has gotten to the point it's become violent. And respectfully, I agreed that I'm not going to push anyone, especially if they're going to get hurt. But with you being an investigator as well, what can you recommend to people from the other end of the spectrum that are going through an oppression, that are going through stuff like that, or going through poltergeist activity or stuff? What can you recommend for patients or for anything reaching out to a team, a local team, a nationwide team, whatever it is?
Don't say demon. Those the first of people are gonna, these teams are gonna be like, nope, I'm not gonna touch that. Either you have a mental illness possibly, or it's just too dark for a lot of people to handle. When it comes to me, I'm a medium, so I get that gut feeling from it, whether it's true or not. But there have been situations where I could have gone in and been killed by somebody who had mental illness. There was a situation with a drug addict. What I would recommend to people is reach out to a team. Just tell them your story, what's going on. Ask them advice. Don't ask them just to come in and take care of all your problems. Ask them advice and answer their questions honestly, because I know I get a little worried about asking people, have they ever been diagnosed with mental illness? Do they have anything physically wrong with them? We had a case with a man that was diabetic, and he had neuropathy, and he was feeling things touching him. And we still to this day think it could be neuropathy that he was feeling. He was feeling his nerves. But we went and we cleansed, and we made the man happy.
Yeah.
I mean, a cleansing is not going to hurt.
Right.
In that kind of situation. I mean, it wasn't anything too bad. I wouldn't suggest that if there is something demonic. Leave that for the experts. But just talk to a team. Don't, bombard them.
Right.
Go for a medium, a psychic medium that is legitimate, that they can maybe get a fill off of it just talking to you, because I do. When I'm talking to these people, I get a feel of whether or not it's real or not.
And that's another hard thing, and we don't need to dive into that because that's going to be another hour conversation. Is the Miss Cleos of the world at 1-800 to tell the problems, the different issues with different mediums trying to make money off of it, in the aspect of, I can help you for a fee. It's said than just listening. It's said than just being a part of it, and understanding where these people are coming from. So is there something that you can recommend before we do a complete 180 on topic, which I like to do, feeling out, is there one or two things you can tell people to know if somebody is legit when it comes to being a sensitive, a medium, whatever it may be?
If you can give them no information and they can tell you information, they're legitimate. The ones that like to draw things out of people, if they're asking too many questions to you, then chances are they're asking to paint a picture. So
and they're good at making a picture beyond that picture.
Yes.
Got it. So I, for one, and we'll talk after the show, that I want to read the book and potentially talk to you again after reading the book. and I want everyone else to have the ability to read the book. So if you don't mind, when we're done with all of this, can you post the information on the cross country page so
Absolutely.
anyone interested can get the book?
Absolutely.
So the 180 now, you are a children's author.
Yes,
we
I
go
am.
we go from oppression and jinns and demons to you write children's stories. So
I'm a
let's hear
Gemini.
about
I have two sides.
let's hear about some of those.
Oh my goodness. I have 4 children's books. One is called Little Moons. It's about a little boy who is fascinated with the night sky that we know. And he talked to my mom and he wanted to know what those things were up there with the moon. And she told him they're stars. He decided to call them Little Moons. So,
So,
which is
it's based on a little boy that you've met before then.
Yes.
Okay.
He's in my life all the time and he's adorable. He still calls them Little Moons. He knows that they're stars. but that book was for him. It's a really short, really cute, easy to read, nicely illustrated book.
Nice.
The next one is a book of nursery rhymes and children's stories and children's poetry. That one tends to go really well for baby showers. It's really cute. It's illustrated. It's like it's for boys and girls. It's whatever you want it to be. It's just so cute. My mother illustrated it and went through hell to get these illustrations right. And I give her major props for that.
That's awesome.
She's my illustrator. The next one is Evie Inspector, Boo at the B&O. I wrote that book for a fundraiser for the B&O Roundhouse up in Cleveland. We did that last year in September, and it's 2 little ghosts, one named Evie, one named Spectre, EVP.
Okay.
I play on that. And they live at the B&O and they go through the trains at night, and it's really cute. It's comical too. I gotta admit, the one I'm the most proud of is my newest one. Actually, I have one sitting here. It's
I didn't know it was complete already.
It's Snowy Tail. I just got a shipment of them in, so
That's awesome. So let's hear about Snowy Tales.
it's Snowy Tales. Silly Selfies and Can a Ghost Cook? This one's inspirational and comedy. Kids of all ages are gonna love this one. It's based on a little girl named Ashley. She found when she was a toddler this snowman that had been thrown into a trash can. And she wanted to rescue him. So she went over and she got him and they took him home and they cleaned him up. And she put him in her room and she said that he was magical. That he was this magical fantasy snowman. And that he would say things like beautiful and it was adorable. And it gave her a lot of inspiration because she was a pretty lonely kid. She actually spent a lot of time with a babysitter. Her parents worked a lot. So she didn't have a lot of friends and a lot of interaction. So Snowy was her best friend. And he gave her self-confidence and the courage to go out and be herself. And she is definitely a free spirit. She's out there. She's Little Miss Rainbow Bright. But
and that's great. And just on the paranormal side of me, have you heard of Robert the Doll?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So the story of Robert the Doll was very lonely kid, and the doll became the best friend, and now the doll's an asshole. So, but it doesn't sound like the snowman is going to go in that direction.
Snowy's cute. This one, Snowy actually, because Ashley's favorite holiday was Halloween, so Snowy went ghost hunting, and he wanted to know what a ghost was. And he takes selfies and he says goofy things and he sees Ashley's Aunt Rosie put a camera in the kitchen and he wants to know why you would put a camera in a kitchen. So we'll see ghosts. So can a ghost cook? I mean, it's really funny. And it's the first of a series. My next one will be a Christmas one. Snowy and a little Sasquatch doll and Santa are going to do stuff for Christmas. So this one I'm so proud of. I love this book. It's been a few years in the making. And Snowy is actually a real doll.
So with the doll, have you ever thought about doing, the thing where when you travel, or teams that travel that you talk to, having them take selfies with the doll at locations they're at or different areas they're at?
That is so funny you say that. I'm going to be at the Gettysburg Bash in a few weeks, and we have because we don't want anybody really touching the real Snowy because
Yeah.
he's pretty old. So we actually had made another Snowy, and we're gonna actually do free selfies with Snowy at Gettysburg, and I fully expect all the celebrities there to take pictures with
Oh yeah, why not?
Snowy.
Like, hey, do you want an autograph? No, I want you to take a picture of the snowman. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but that's awesome, and that's where you get a feel for the people in the field. We brought up at the beginning of this the legitimacy and stuff like that. That the people that will take that picture are the ones that are in this for the right reasons.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you're going to be getting vibes left and right. Especially, have you been to Gettysburg before?
I have. Gettysburg is like my home away from home.
Okay,
I love it
so
there.
I love Gettysburg. I took people ghost hunting to the old orphanage and the Jenny
Yeah.
Wade house. The hard part is it was a bigger group and they are very, very small locations.
Oh my gosh.
So that's something that you'd want to investigate with like one or two people at most.
Absolutely.
But I've always wanted to investigate a battlefield, and it doesn't need to be Gettysburg. It can be, Antietam. It could be, I'd love to do something in Europe, like beaches of Normandy, just in the middle of the night, just walk on the beach and see if you hear or see anything.
Okay.
And then Valley Forge, where George Washington was and everything. I want to do an investigation there, but it's very hard. And what I've realized that a lot of locations shy away from the paranormal because of the stuff we just talked about a little bit ago. The ones that want to make everything evil and the ones that want to make everything about murder and death and stuff like that, where you, like you said, you got to take the good with the bad. Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania does not do a paranormal program anymore because there was too much going on saying there's demons here, there's evil here, there's, blood, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, number one, no shit, it's a prison. So there's going to be blood. Number two, though, is us as investigators, we're into the history. It's not just the aspect of looking for something that's going to scare the hell out of us. It's we want to learn, we want to research, we want to understand why these people or spirits or non-humans are still here or why they're there in general. So when it comes to your writings, you have the dark side of the apple and then Snowy Tales, right?
Yep.
Coming up that have you ever thought of writing something for children about paranormal investigating?
I have the EV Inspector book, the Booth B&O. That's actually the second book I had wrote for EV Inspector. That one is going to take a little while to illustrate. I'm going to need to find a professional illustrator for this one. It's actually about the original EV Inspector book is about psychic kids and getting bullied because they're psychic and ghost hunting, and that'll be a series too, where they teach kids about ghost hunting, teach kids about being psychic, teach kids about how the stuff is where it can be scary, but these are just people without bodies 90% of the time.
Right.
I have a lot of little kids in my life that they're not scared because they know me. They know my mom, who's also, she's my partner in this. She's my partner in Two Realm Paranormal. And so we're mother-daughter team, and she knows the kids and she teaches them. And it's really, I don't want them to be scared. Like I was when I was little.
And like I said, afraid of the dark, basements, stuff like that. It's the next generation of ghost hunters. You don't want, the next generation coming up and afraid to look at an abandoned building. You'd rather them come up understanding at least the basics and then making something of it. And that's one thing I like to focus on too, when I have, new people come to events, and a lot of stuff I can't have kids at because it's venue rules. So,
Yeah.
below the age of 18 or whatnot. But most recently, I did a venue in New York that allowed 12-year-olds, like you bring 12-year-olds. And so I brought family members and I told the owner, like, hey, here's the next generation. And guess what? They were fine like the whole night until they heard a man audibly say something. And then, in lack of a better terms, F this, I'm out, came out of one of their mouths. I cracked up. Like, I thought it was hilarious because I've had that moment. The very first time I heard an audible voice, I had the same reaction. I just got up and I walked out of the room. But it's just the first time you experience something, and then once you get through that first time, you're good. With the exception of what you experienced for years, you don't want to do that again.
No way. No way.
So with what you're going to post is, we're going to wrap it up in a minute. Let me ask, what would you recommend for what's your favorite book, children's book? Snowy Tales, you said is your favorite one, but prior to that, what would be your favorite one?
Little Moons. I love Little Moons is adorable. And it's actually been my bestseller at paranormal conventions.
Really?
Yeah, it's so funny. I'll take that, and I'm expecting, like, my mom and I will go to the conventions together, and you have to take your kids' books. I'm like, Mom, the kids' books aren't going to sell at a paranormal convention. And sure enough, I've got kids' books flying off my table. Even Adam Berry came up and looked at Little Moons and said, oh my God, this is so cute.
That's awesome.
So I guess I sell children's books at paranormal conventions
Yeah,
now.
why not? So with what you're going to post on the page, are people going to have the ability to buy any one of your books then?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm interested too. Like I said, I'd like to have you back on after I read your most recent book, because
Absolutely.
I'm very curious on the details of everything you went through. And I'm really happy that you made time to be on here today. I appreciate it. And
thank you for having me.
yeah, and I look forward to talking more, and maybe we'll investigate together one day.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, I will talk to you backstage. So just hold on a few minutes. All right.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thank you for coming on. Say bye to Sabrina. I am very happy she was here, and I will see you all next week.